أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. Brothers and sisters, inshallah, Eid Mubarak, Eid Mab'ath or Ba'tha Mubarak. This is a very important event for us as Muslimin and especially as followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, because we believe that the 27th of Rajab is the day that the final messenger of Allah, his messengership started, and that these verses of the Holy Quran, of Iqra, of Surah Alaq, verse 96 of the Quran, has been revealed to the Prophet of Islam. But the question that we have is that, do all Muslims believe that this is the date that the Prophet of Islam, his messengership started? Most of the Sunnis have the opinion that it was in the month of Ramadan. But we, as followers of Ahlul Bayt, and we have traditions from Ahlul Bayt, that there is a different time from when the Quran came, as we have in Laylatul Qadr. We have this in Surah Al-Qadr. We have Inna anzalnahu fi Laylatul Qadr, that Allah descended the Quran in Laylatul Qadr in Shahr Ramadan. So how does this match with our saying that in Rajab, the Quran also started to become revealed? The answer that some of the ulama give is that in Laylatul Qadr, the Quran came as in its entirety to the soul, to the heart of the Prophet of Islam. But the beginning of the tadriji and step-by-step revelation of the Quran and dissension of the Quran, and to come for humanity and to be expressed for humanity, was in the month of Rajab. So as we have verses in the Quran is something that has been descended tadriji for us, step by step, verse by verse, in this period of, say, 23 years. Therefore, this is the beginning of the tadriji process. But yes, the Holy Quran, all of it in its entirety, was revealed to the heart of the Holy Prophet of Islam. But unfortunately, there are many books of hadith, and there are many misinterpretations about Bad'ul Wahi, or the beginning of revelation. And it's important for us, well, someone says, why do you mention these? These are not in Shia sources, these are in Sunni sources. Well, a lot of times what academia uses is Sunni sources, and they pass judgments on Islam, on al-Muslimin, according to hadith that are in, for example, Bukhari, even though we don't accept those necessarily, some of those hadith, but they use those against us. So we do have some hadith about the occurrence, what happened during Bad'ul Wahi, or we said, have difference of opinion on the date of when it started. Also, we have a difference of opinion on the context and what happened in general. So the Prophet of Islam went to the cave of Hira, and some say it was Faran. As you see in the Old Testament, Faran is used as Paran or Paran. And Yaqut al-Himyawi, who is an expert in geology and geography, he mentions that Paran or Faran are the mountain chains, and the Hira is part of that. So when you see that the sun will set in Faran or in the Old Testament, meaning the coming of the final seal, the seal of the messengers in Faran, that is Hira, the cave of Hira is part of that mountain chain. So when you look at one of the narrations in Al-Bukhari mentioning that somehow the Prophet was caught by surprise, na'udhu billah, and as if he did not have that religion of worship, as we have as in followers of the Ahlul Bayt, the Prophet would do 10 or 20 times, secretly perform Hajj before this age of 40, that he became a messenger, and that he would worship Allah. And that we have actually in the hadith that the Prophet of Islam, an angel in Shia literature from Nahj al-Balagha, you can look from Imam Ali in Khutbah Ghasiyah, from the time the Holy Prophet had been weaned, the Almighty Allah had associated the most distinguished angel with him, so that he may show him the path of magnanimity and goodness during day as well as night. So you understand that from Hadith of Ahlul Bayt, you see an angel was appointed to the Prophet of Islam from the very beginning to teach him the path. So for us, there's no surprise. So yes, revelation is something very intense. There is worrying of the Holy Prophet of Islam. So we're going to mention that. But in the Sunni literature, for example, in Sahih Bukhari, you have a hadith, and it is very offensive for the Muslimin. Now, we was talking to a person that came into the madhab of Ahlul Bayt, and he said that these hadith are very offensive for me. That how can my Prophet of Islam, when hearing this and understanding this revelation, that he comes back to the home of Lady Khadija and says, "Oh Khadija, what is wrong with me?" Confused, very confused, and does not know what's going on. And then she tells him never, and explains to them, that there's no reason, for you to be confused of what's going on. You are a prophet. Yes, we accept that she believed in Islam and she was one of those that was awaiting. Yes, we accept that. But how could it be true that the Prophet of Islam was caught off guard, was surprised at the age of 40 that now he is a messenger? And then we have even worse than this. I'm just saying this so that we can understand some of the tahrif and distortion that has happened to the seerah of the Prophet of Islam. One of our great ulama by the name of Seyed Ja'far Murtada Amali, and I have his book, right here. We'll be reading from it, inshallah, that he mentions that this is a sahih, a 35-volume seerah of the Prophet, because it's correct, because they have changed the seerah of the Holy Prophet of Islam so much that if you want to discover the truth and what really happened to the Prophet of Islam, you have to, like a archaeologist, remove the dust and dirt when they want to find artifacts or bones of animals. They have to remove the dust first and be very careful with preserving what has been remaining for us. In the same way, the seerah has to be, you have to remove some of this dust and dirt that has been as a result of the Bani Umayyah and Bani Abbas, and they're bringing the status of the Prophet of Islam down. Now let's read the rest of this hadith that we do not believe. So it says here that you read that, "I fear that something may have happened to me. What is wrong with me? Na'udhu I fear that something has happened to me." And then she says, "Never." And then you see that Khadija then accompanied him to her cousin Waraqa, who was, the specialist when it came to the pre-Islamic period. So as a Christian, he comes and looks and he was familiar with the sciences and this knowledge, and he used to write in Arabic. So then he comes to Waraqa and says, "Oh, my nephew, what have you seen?" The Prophet described whatever had been seen. Waraqa says, "This is the name of Namus, whom Allah had sent to Musa. I wish I were young and could have lived up to the time when your people would churn you out." Then he says, "Will they churn me out?" So then Waraqa is telling him that you are a prophet. And then the wahi and the revelation begins to stop. And after a few days, I'm reading, Waraqa died, and this is in Sahih Bukhari, Hadith 6982. After a few days, Waraqa died, and the divine inspiration was also paused for a while, and the Prophet became so sad, as we have heard, that he intended several times to throw himself from the tops of high mountains. And every time he went up to the top of the mountain in order to throw himself down, Jibreel would appear before him and say, "Oh Muhammad, you are indeed Allah's messenger in truth. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala." So you see such narrations that when it comes to mab'ath or bi'tha, that the messenger of Allah was confused, was a normal person, was scared, and even had suicidal thoughts. Na'udhu billah. So this is the importance to learn the seerah of the Holy Prophet from the Ahlul Bayt, not from sources that are influenced from the Bani Abbas, for example. So let's look at one of the hadith we have from Shia sources about the Prophet's true reaction. So we have a hadith from Zurara from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. It says, كيف لم يخف رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فيما يأتيه من قبل الله. How was Rasulullah not afraid? Zurara asked Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. And mentions here, and this is in Ayashi brings this, Tafsir al-Ayashi. Or actually was Ayashi, was a Sunni scholar and became a Shia scholar. And يكون مما ينزع به الشيطان. Then it says, in the hadith continues, فقال إن الله إذا اتخذ عبدا ورسولا. When Allah chooses an abd, a servant, a messenger, أنزل عليه السكينة والوقار. Allah also sends with him calmness and firmness, you could say. So you have in the Shia tradition that actually the Prophet of Islam had sakina and waqar, had tranquility. فَكَانَ الَّذِي يَأْتِيهِ مِنْ قِبَالِ اللَّهِ مِثْلَ الَّذِي يَرَاهُ بِعَيْنِهِ. And what he comes from God is as if he sees with his eyes. So there's no doubt. You're afraid of things that you do not know. There's no doubt. And then we also have here وَسُئِلَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ كَيْفَ عَلِمَتَ الرُّسُلُ أَنَّهَا الرُّسُلُ. How do the messengers know they are messenger? Then Imam Sa'ad when its hadith, Ma'sum says, كَشْوَ عَنْهُمْ الْغِطَاء. The curtains are removed for them. So we understand from our hadith that this situation in such a night, that it is Mubarak for us. And Badul Wahi comes in this aspect. As you know, they divide the seer of the Prophet into different topics, and one of them is Badul Wahi, what happened at the beginning of Revelation. It is, we said, two things that we are indifferent. One is that the date, Allama Majlisi mentioned that there is ijma in the Shia scholars that it happened in the 27th of Rajab. There is no problem in this also being in with the Quran, Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr, that we have brought the Quran in its entirety in the night of Qadr, because there are different stages that the Quran descended, and there it descended to the heart of the Prophet of Islam. And also we see here that the beginning of the Tadriji, because the Quraysh, there's a verse in the Quran that talks about the Quraysh, the Arabs complaining that why didn't the Quran come all together? They say, why didn't the Quran all come together? Why does it come in stages? So this is the beginning of the Quran, the revelation in stages, and this was an exact example of where the Prophet of Islam his seerah has been distorted, and many other examples from the knowledge of the Prophet, from the actions of the Prophet, that it is very offensive and we do not accept this. And these were actions of the Bani Umayyah, Bani Abbas, that they were trying to show that the Prophet of Islam was a normal human being, not much different than that caliph or that khalifa that is his successor. And therefore, if you see, different sins come from the khalifa, if you do see different actions from the khalifa, don't really think, that na'udhu billah, the Prophet of Islam had this station that you say so, that he was truly infallible, that he was truly, as we have in the hadith, that, the angels were raising him, because there's such a separation from the Khulafa, and especially the Bani Umayyads and the Abbasids, from what the Prophet of Islam did, that this was a way for them to justify their power. So let's go on to continue and talk about more questions that we have about revelation, because for us it is a fascinating topic. What is wahi? What is revelation? So revelation in general means a quick notice, means a hidden implication of something. In terms of terminology, it is used for a spiritual connection between a prophet and the unseen world, especially when it comes to legislative knowledge that they have, that you have a new code, that you have a new book, that you are now a prophet, meaning that you have a new message to share to the people and something for them, a new command that you have. And remember, keep this in mind, because at the end we're going to be mentioning what is the difference between wahi that we have for the prophets and the descension of the angels for others than the prophets, for example, the family of the prophet that we have in hadith. What is the difference? And we're going to explain that. So you see a hidden notice. Wahy is a quick note, a way to communicate, that Allah communicates to his emissary, to that person that he has brought to show mankind the truth. And you see in the Quran, wahy, and in general, we could say that this hidden implication or inspiration is used differently. Sometimes it's used for Prophet Zakaria. Sometimes it's used as guidance to the instinct that bees have. The honeybee has been inspired, for example, to make your home in the mountains and on the trees. Therefore, also you have the guidance of the heavens and its ordinance. Also you have from the mother of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, that she received inspiration to nurse him. Then when you fear for him, cast him into the river. Casting of Musa into the river alayhi salam was part of this inspiration that she is not a prophet, but she's receiving instruction from God. So a type of quick notice, a hidden implication that comes to the bees, comes to the mother of Prophet Musa, comes to the creation. But when it comes specifically to the prophets, it means to bring with them legislation, to bring with them tashri', to bring with them legislation. So what are the characteristics? Sometimes, we see that it is a conversation of God with his prophet without any medium. Sometimes wahi comes as a direct conversation. Sometimes, as many times, Prophet Jibreel comes, an angel comes and brings that revelation. Sometimes it's a dream. This is why he comes as a dream form for Prophet Abraham alayhi salam, for Prophet Ismail. The test that he had to sacrifice his son came as a true dream, for example. So therefore, you see, sometimes it's behind something like Prophet Musa alayhi salam. It was this revelation occurred through a tree, we could say. But whatever it is, Allah chooses the best way for this revelation to happen. And what is important here is to know that there is a difference that we have between revelation of the prophets and what happens in that inspiration that happens with non-prophets. So we mentioned the bee, for example, or we gave examples of Prophet Musa alayhi salam's mother. So what is the difference when we say that the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, the family of the Prophet, also has the ability to get this type of information? So what we say here, this is tasdidi, this is directive revelation, or this is directive inspiration, meaning that what the Imams receive is not a new message. They are not a prophet. We do not say the prophet, so we do not worship. People say, you Shi'as, you worship the Ahlul Bayt. You can only worship Allah. We do not worship anybody but Allah. We strengthen our relation with God with holy figures such as Anbiya and their successors, prophets and their successors. 2, we do not say that why he comes to Imam Ali alayhi salam or to Imam Hassan or Imam Mahdi ajjallahu ta'ala faraja, and the meaning that it is a legislative inspiration. It is a non-legislative inspiration, meaning that it has for them instructions of social guidance, news of the future, what events are going to be happening, as you have in Surah Al-Qadr, Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Tanazzalul malaikata war ruh, that every year there's this descension. Tanazzul means every year this happens. That al-malaika war ruh, and Jibreel is part of the malaika, Jibreel is part of the angels. That every year the angels descend. So during the time of the Prophet of Islam, the angels descended on the Prophet of Islam during Laylatul Qadr. After the Prophet, who do the angels descend? If you say Tanazzul in the Arabic, means every year this is happening. Every year we have Laylatul Qadr. Then where and to who do the angels descend? We say to the successors. And very clear in the hadith, the Prophet tells Imam Ali that this is my surah, Laylatul Qadr is my surah. After me, it will be your surah. Then it will be Imam Hassan's and Imam Hussein's in the Imams. So there is Tanazzulul Malaika to the Imams, but not with wahi in the terms of a new message, not in terms of a legislative inspiration, revelation, with events that they need and knowledge that they need of, say, the future or what's going to happen to the ummah, because they are divine guides. They're not, the Imams are not just an alama or an alim reading and studying texts and giving fatwas. They don't do that. They have knowledge from God. They have knowledge from the Prophet of Islam, as we have Imam Ali alayhi salam mentioning during the death of the Holy Prophet. He opened 1,000 doors to him. Each door had 1,000 doors, 1,000 gates. So you see that the Prophet, Imam Ali, learned from the Prophet of Islam from the very beginning. But also there is this tanazzulul malaika, meaning that there is this inspiration that they have, because they need to have it, because they are divine guides. And you need to have someone with knowledge other than human knowledge to preserve the Quran, to preserve the teachings of the Quran, to teach to us our ahkam and our laws, because in that 23 years, all of it was not explained. So therefore the Imams came and explained. People had questions, and society changed, and they had questions, and the Imams, from the same religion, from the same Sharia, from the same legislation, not adding anything, because the halal of Prophet Muhammad is halal to the Day of Judgment. They're explaining what the Quran is saying, explaining what the beliefs are and what the ahkam is. So with this said so far, and this inshallah was for us a review about what revelation is, and we explained so far that Bad'ul Wahi is different for us as followers of the Ahlul Bayt. The Prophet had an angel instructing him from the very beginning. He knew that he was a prophet, and he believed and worshipped God. And he was not, na'udhu billah, didn't have in any other religion, but the true religion that Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam had and Prophet Ismail had, and the true Meccans had, that they were waiting for the final prophet, that they would do Hajj, they would do a type of salat, and they would do a type of worship that was linked to the Abrahamic faiths. But now here we're going to end tonight with a very important discussion, and this relates to us more now, personally, to our lives. And so we talked about the meaning, the Quran applications, the ways of revelation. But let's answer this question. This is a very important question for us. Do we need revelation? Do we need wahi? Looks like, mankind is, mashallah, doing good by himself. That we are discovering, we went to the moon, we're going to go to Mars, going to the depths of the oceans. We have different types of technologies. Our intellect is so powerful. We're, discovering things at an amazing rate, unprecedented rate. We're communicating. Right now, we're talking people are from all over around the world. We're communicating to each other. So do we need revelation? And what is our proof that we do need revelation? So we're going to talk about this. This is an important topic. And because, of course, less weight has been given after the Renaissance, and it turned to the back towards the church in Europe in the Renaissance, and turning to the back of religion by many philosophers. We understand that we have to explain this topic. Why do we need revelation? One of the proofs that we give for revelation is that, first of all, mankind is premised like this. Mankind is seeking perfection. Mankind wants to seek perfection. And he needs to seek perfection by the use of free will. He needs to do this by himself. He needs to reach prosperity, felicity, happiness, and to step away from the slippery slope of wretchedness by his choice. He needs to do this by himself. A choice has to be real. It cannot be coerced. And therefore, a correct choice is when someone has the required amount of knowledge of the destination and the path, and that the justice of God requires that such knowledge be available to man who would embark in such a journey. That man's journey is completion, that after proving God's existence, proving that God exists, and now we know that man wants to reach completion, and we're talking about a necessary existence, and we are contingent existence, and our path is reaching God. Our path is going towards God. We have proved the hereafter from our intellectual and rational mind that this world cannot exists just by itself. That this world is the world of limitations. There must be another life. There must be a hereafter to give you true pleasure, to give you true reward. This world, how many times you come back to this world, come back to this world, come back to this world, it won't give you true pleasure because you will still be bothered. You'll still be hurt. This is the world of pain. This is the world of death. And this is the world of sickness. It happens. So we're looking at another world that mankind can be truly rewarded and mankind can be truly punished. And there's not the world of limitations. So after the rational intellect proves God that we must have an uncaused cause, we do not create ourselves, there must be a creator. And that too, there is a destination. There is for us a destination, another life. The question comes to this, is that how can we come from the origin and go towards the destination? If we are going to do this with our free choice, with our free will, we have to be given, not that we are forcing God, God by himself, not from the outside, God by himself makes it obligatory to reveal and share that knowledge that is adequate and needed for us to go forward on our journey. Or else we will be confused, or else we won't know what to do. So therefore, the path has to be explained. When we prove that there is a origin and a destination, that path and how to get there. Let me give you a very clear example. Someone invites you to their house and never gives you their address, never tells you how to get to their home. What kind of invitation is that? I don't know how to get there. I want to get there. I'm asking everybody, but nobody knows. Only that owner of that home knows their address, their specific address. Will you reach their home? No, you will not reach their home. So how come that God creates us? He's our sustainer, our Lord. And how can he not give us an address or a way, a direction to find him? And this becomes more clear when we look at the tools that we already have. Man's normal tools and terrestrial means of knowledge is either sensorial or rational. It's either through the 5 senses, from seeing, hearing, tasting. It's sensorial, we see things, they exist, or it's rational from the intellect, from logic. But both of these, we understand, are not sufficient for us, because both of these do not give us a complete outlook, a complete path for us to follow. For example, when it comes to what to do and what not to do, the intellect understands things by general, but not specifically what way of life should I have. We have so many philosophers that are using the rational mind, and none of them came to the conclusion to a way of life to reach God. That is the path of religion. That is the way of religion. That is the path of the prophets and God's emissaries to show us the way. Because how else would we know that this is what God is content with? This is how you satisfy God. These are the rights that people have. This is the way to observe people's rights, true rights. Or for example, when it comes to theology and it comes to understanding who God is, how else do we know who he is exactly? He is unseen. Our rational mind can understand it and prove him in general, but can it give you the details of this God? To some extent it can, but not fully. We complete our understanding of God by revelation, by the prophets that came to us, by the successors that very specifically in the Quran says, "Laysa kamithlihi shay." Nothing is like him. Or you say, Allahu Samad. God is the eternal refuge. That everything that you need, every contingency that you have, you turn to him and he removes your contingencies. He removes those things that you have a need for. So therefore, that description of who God is, because mankind has always been confused with the description of God. Some have compared them to humans. Some have compared him to other beings. Some have worshipped. Yes, the intellect comes and proves these things as being false. Both those sifat and attributes of God are explained by the prophets and their successors. Also in the hereafter, exactly what will happen in the hereafter, that is explained to us in detail by the Quran, by the revelation, by the hadith. Also, the path that we have to take when, for example, we understand that lying is bad, the intellect says lying is bad, but is lying always bad? Some philosophers say that lying is always bad no matter what. But we have in the narrations, and we have this understanding from religion that if there's something more important than one sin, that you have to do aham and muhim, that sometimes you have to lie to preserve someone's life. If someone comes towards me and says, he's a murderer, and says, where'd this brother go? Do I have to tell him the truth? Yes, he's over there. Or should I tell him a lie and say, no, he went this way, to save that person's life? So life is full of these things that are ambiguous for us, unclear for us, these decisions that are clear. And we need to reach completion with our free will, with a choice that we have. And to have a true choice, you need to have knowledge, and the path needs to be clear. So therefore, we understand from this proof, we need something that is supra-sensorial, supra-rational, something that is going to complete our sensorial, we could say knowledge or sensory perception, and also complete our rational mind. And the revelation illuminates all aspects of our life then. So therefore, we understand from this proof that we have that we are in dire need of revelation, because we want to find the path of God, to submit to God. We need to find the path that we can be able to please God, to make sure that He is content with us. Or else it could just be something that is part of our imagination, and we could have made a mistake. So therefore, we see that one of the most important things that God makes obligatory for Himself is to give us another type of knowledge that will complete our knowledge. So we have the rational knowledge, we have sensorial knowledge, and also we have revelation that is a medium for God to talk to us through His prophets, to express to us the path. So therefore, we can't be confused. We won't be misguided. And that is what the prophets have done. And so far, if you realize this or not, brothers and sisters, the way and how accurate we have been in our worldview, in monotheism, in rights that we give for humans, a lot of this has already been affected by previous prophets. We have, traditions that we have, statements that 124,000 prophets came. So the level of knowledge that mankind has already been benefited from these prophets. And prophets for each nation. And therefore the understandings that we have and this communication has already happened, and this effect happened. But the final mess of messengers is Prophet Muhammad, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And he gives us that completion that we need to have to be able to find the path that is, or we could say that address we say to reach God. Now, finally, we're going to end with this. So therefore, you understand the importance of revelation. That revelation is taking us out of misguidance. Revelation is taking us out of confusion, or else we wouldn't know how to contact God, how to talk to God. Revelation is teaching us this beautiful salat that we have, that we pray together, and we pray 17 units a day. This is from revelation. Our aql cannot make up salat. Revelation tells us about Shahr Ramadan, a time period to fast for us. And it gives us these acts of worship. Revelation tells us that if you kill one human, it's equal to killing all of mankind, and gives life, human value to human life, much more than we could even think with our intellect. That one person is equal to 7 billion people. So revelation completes our intellect, and it goes hand in hand. It goes hand in hand with each other. Never does the revelation contradict with the aql. These are joined together. But one of the things that is very important for us at the end, and you see the importance of studying Quran and studying Revelation and studying Hadith, because it resolves the mysteries of the universe. It resolves the mysteries of how to live. It is that, in dua, and this one of our scholars was talking about this, and I really liked it, and I wanted to share it with you, that when it comes to bi'tah, we really are lacking something and really are missing something. We read in Shahr Ramadan, we read in the Dua al-Iftitah, Allahumma inna nashku ilayka faqd nabiyyina. So, salawatullah alayhi wa alayhi. That God, we complain to you. Actually, some places we're taught to complain. Is in Dua al-Iftitah, complain. Usually you're taught not to complain, but here it says nashku, complain. Ilayka faqd nabiyyina. God, we complain to you that we are missing your prophet. Meaning that even though this dua of iftitah came during the time of Ghaybatul Sughra, came during the time, I believe is Muhammad ibn Uthman al-Amri, the second representative of the Holy Imam from the Nahiya zone, from the protected zone. The Muqaddas, Nahiya al-Muqaddasa, the protected zone. So this is the time during the Ghaybat of Imam Zaman. And you're complaining, faqd nabiyyina, you're complaining. So this is dua you're reading during the occultation of the 12th Imam, and you're complaining that our Prophet isn't here. Why are we complaining that the Prophet isn't here? Because the natural way of order was that people would have a complete human being. Societies and nations would have a complete human being, and that Prophet or their successor would live with them, would explain to them, and personally, especially those that wanted to seek more knowledge, they would move and change location like Salman of Farsi and search, and they would find such people that were God's emissaries or successors, and they would live with them and they would reach completion with them. And as the scholar was saying, if you want to be kind, we're kind to some extent. We haven't seen the Prophet of Islam, we haven't seen the infallibles with our eyes. So we are complaining to God from being deprived of seeing the Holy Prophet and living with him, and seeing one instance of his rahmah and mercy, that he would free people, people that would be tortured, he would free them as a child. Or when it comes to someone during the end of their life, he would instruct them to help them to become Muslims so they wouldn't be chastised in the hereafter. The love and rahmat of the Prophet, which is rahmatan lil alameen, that the day in Mecca, after all those years of war and battle and torture and killing so many of the Prophet Muhammad's family, that when he gains the advantage in Mecca, the chant was, today, al-yawm yawmun marhama. This is the day of mercy. And he frees everybody. And they call those the tulaqa, those that have been freed, even though they were supposed to be enslaved. This is the rules of the customs at the time. When you lose a battle and you're the enemies, you're supposed to be enslaved. He frees everybody. He frees them. So we are separate from witnessing and living and being directly guided from the Holy Prophet. Our compassion would be much different. Our worship would be much different. Some say that if they visited, for example, one of the ulama for 2 years, they would reach high levels of mysticism. Imagine living next to the Holy Prophet of Islam, imagining that he would be your neighbor. And this is what mankind, this is the favor that God had given us, that each time period had an imam, and that each nation will be raised with an imam. Then we come to this part of the dua, وَغَيْبَةَ وَلِيِّنَا. So now you understand how important it is with you to live with an insan in common, a complete human being, how much you miss the mercy of the Holy Prophet of Islam, that we are orphans. They call us orphans because we are separated from our imam. You see that you will not reach that potential that you had has been taken away from you. That pain that you have now, all of it is because of separation of the imam from the infallible, either the prophet or the successor. If you lived next to them, you wouldn't have any question anymore. Anything, because they have knowledge of everything that man can have. Every question that you would have, they would have an answer to. And this is what we are deprived of, from living next to the infallible Prophet of Islam, living with his successors. And then you come to the conclusion how bad we should do dua to expedite the return of our imam. That nothing will be solved. That's why it is our faraj. It is for our grief to be relieved. All of us, because sickness will be by the blessings of Imam Mahdi will be removed when he comes back. Poverty will be removed. Insufficiencies that we have financially will be removed. Any type of spiritual issues will be removed. Why? Because the Imam we can live with the Imam and the blessings of listening to the Imam and him being in control of the world. And when in terms of sickness, there might be maybe, I don't know, maybe some forms of sickness, but at least when it comes to sickness that comes from bala and calamity, we removed. So therefore, we understand that how important this line is. Allahumma inna nashku ilayka faqda nabiyyina. This is mab'ath of the Prophet, and how much we miss the Prophet of Islam, and how much we lived to see him, to witness him, and see him with his holy face and with our eyes. And we truly believe that the way of how much of a believer and practice of a Muslim you would be, if you were to see him, it would be much different, and how much we should do dua for Imam Mahdi to come back. So inshallah, from this gathering that we had, which covered these topics, alhamdulillah, that we talked about the commencement of revelation, Badul Wahy, and we said it is in the month of Rajab, 27th, and the Quran came as an entirety in the month of Ramadan, but it started in the month of Rajab. Also, we understood the meanings, and we said the difference between the inspiration, the directive, inspiration of the Imams, that is non-legislative. And today also we talked about the fact that our need for revelation. Why do we need revelation? Because we said that our rational mind and our sensory perception is not adequate to find the path. And we need something else, and God needs to share his knowledge, but it's obligatory on himself, not from the outside, that he shares us with his knowledge so that we can know the path. And we talked about finally how much we miss the Prophet of Islam, and we complain that we are separated from the infallibles, and inshallah Allah will give us the opportunity to be at the service of our Imam, Holy Imam, Imam Mahdi, inshallah. At the end, let's recite Surah Fatiha. There are a few people that have passed away in the community, and we had Brother Ibrahim Inish that has passed away. We have Sister Maryam Abdullah that has passed away, and other people that has passed away from different Islamic schools. And we understand how important it is to keep them all in our du'as and to do du'a for their family members, that they will continue the path of the, inshallah, the Ahl Bayt, inshallah, and remain strong. Let's recite Surah Fatiha for them. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Ya Allah, we ask you, because of the honor of Imam, the Holy Prophet of Islam, the honor of the Quran and the revelation, make us, inshallah, act upon the Quran and make the Quran, inshallah, the light of guidance for us, and that, inshallah, the life of our children and our children's children all will be according to the Quran and Hadith, inshallah. Ya Allah, we ask you to cure the sick, inshallah, those that are suffering right now. Ya Allah, we ask you, it is the night of Friday, the eve of Friday, to forgive the sins of those that have passed away from our communities, inshallah, and of our family members, to bless them. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us completion, inshallah, and to allow us to see the holy face, the luminous face of Imam Mahdi, inshallah, and to be part of his companions, and inshallah, may Allah expedite his return. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum.